Okay, so I had to restart this video because I realized I was struggling to string a sentence together, so I should have pre-planned the video. Like with points, I thought I could just improvise it, but it's not as easy as I thought. Um, so in this video, I'm just going to talk about the unis I've been to, and I'm already moisturizer in, and sunscreen in, and I'm doing foundation, even though I don't really like foundation. I have to find a blush because, again, that is my favorite makeup product. But I don't know where my... Where did it go? Where did it go? My stain. There's a really nice I'm going to have to do without it. Okay. Where did I put it though? It's not in my purse. I bet it's somewhere on the floor. Right, so universities. I'm going to restart talking about Holloway. So one of the positives with Royal Holloway, or the pros, is that they gave a lot of people a second chance. So I did classics at uni, or classical studies, and I chose it because I wasn't sure between like English and history. And I didn't fully understand the kind of social context in which that subject kind of got its name. It's a very like private school subject that, yes, is taught in some colleges, but it's like it doesn't really have that same punch. As soon as you take classics out of like upper class contexts, it's not that it's useless. I was talking to like a lecturer. I was emailing some insane shit to lecturers from the department I interviewed at, but one of them got back to me and we were exchanging like ideas for a moment, and they were saying, in potentially a slightly sarcastic way, because that's the thing with classics, it is an intellectual subject that's done so poorly in most places. Like intellectual, like, you know, it's starter stuff. Like Greece and Rome weren't that advanced, but they were really advanced when you consider how like under-resourced they were. Like it was the first kind of, well, not the first, but it was a really kind of relevant point in time for like origins of civilization and law and state, and organizing people for the purpose of war and conquering, like taking over, and managing city-state matters. It was like a set of old kind of ideas of how that should be done, that even like as we see now England is looking at for ideas for prop, like as a prop, looking towards. Fucking hell, I really can't. The thing is, as I thought, like talking on camera wasn't that tricky, but it's bloody hard. Anyways, to give another example, the Iliad, which is like a famous Homeric epic that was kind of like sang between generations of people back in ancient Greece. That text has been found in like army camps for years, like tracking back to Vietnam, I believe. Um, so it's looked at as like a really kind of prolific text, in kind of motivating slash attributing to the grandiosity or the human spirit, the fervor of soldiers when tasked with war. I'm trying to like summarizing shit isn't easy either. I feel like I've like gone the classic. I started talking about one thing and now I've ended up here. I don't think I needed to explain all of that. But it's an exceptionally useful subject when you look at it from a vast range of angles. But I also potentially controversially understand why it's been gatekept, and why the study of it has been kind of managed in a way that leans to it being more useful to the state. Does that make sense? Fuck. But I would have loved to have done it in Cambridge, which is where I initially interviewed. But I was so in over my head, and I really had no faith in even them being able to do that subject justice, considering how postmodern everything is now. There are plenty of articles saying, which I spoke about at Goldsmiths a little in my essay, how like out of touch the subject is, how it's becoming useless. Same with ancient history, which is completely untrue. And I'm not just saying that from the perspective of someone who's done the subject and is being forced to defend it, but in the same breath, it's been watered down so much. Because at the end of it all, at the end of the day, students have little faith in themselves. They're really keen to keep everything open, to never like see any books be burned, any books be censored, but in the same breath are really cautious with approaching the literature. So the kind of seminars, the lessons, the way it's handled is completely catered to the modern audience, or to what students would complain about, so that the department, at least in Royal Holloway, is kept functioning and proactive, because they've been at risk of having the department completely dissolved. So they've had to fight that battle before defending the subject to the uni. And I had this conversation with the head of department who was telling me about this over like a tea. He was saying this to me because, as an additional layer to defending the subject, he said that their department was notoriously like lethal at defending the subject from being dissolved, and there were other departments that really struggled and would turn to them for help. So I think the head of the department was saying this to kind of be like, look, there is really, really smart people running the course, but everyone's what is it, a slave, a victim, a negotiator with the big M, marketing. You have to make that subject sound appealing to the modern audience, and this version of it was also kind of the more vocational one. So when I was interviewing, I would have done a 4-year course with the entirety of my first year being just a language. I would have had an intensive year of learning Greek and Roman. Roman? Fucking hell. Greek and Latin, my bad. And I was really excited to do that, but at Holloway it was optional. I did try with the Latin, but I just... And I did great on some modules. For example, we had an Athenian law one that was wonderful with this Danish lecturer who was this older lady, and she was absolutely excellent. But I think the entire kind of subject, because it's normally used for, or conventionally, best say that, used for kind of nationalistic purposes here, and it's viewed as quite a conservative subject, with, of course, range within. When presented to a Gen Z audience, they had to completely scrap that, essentially the very driving force of the subject, and make it appeal to us as like readers of like Percy Jackson, as readers of fan fiction, as kind of curious history fans. So it was a tough kind of experience in that respect, but I did still love it. But I think I was pretty lost taking it. Especially after my year abroad, I was so depressed. I missed my friends from my year abroad so much, that I was basically a dysfunctional person for an entire year. And it wasn't even for attention. It wasn't even this kind of grand performance art. I looked better than I ever have. But I was just completely and utterly miserable. But right, back to Holloway as a university, because I've really kind of veered into explaining my subject, but I feel like that's necessary. So it's, Holloway is really good, I believe, for top for psychology, music, and someone was saying biology as well, or biomed. So I think those are the top 3 subjects, and it's a research university, with a very small student body, in comparison to other universities. So campus uni, with a lot of students traveling in, to kind of like a bar and a club, couple of pubs on site, everything really kind of in one place. Which was lovely. Although I did kind of struggle making friends at certain points. I think in Holloway I had friends from elsewhere, And then I had a very tight-knit group. Fuck. Where is my sharpener? I'm literally not going to be able to use this without it. I just know it is also somewhere on the floor. Well, I can still kind of use it without. But I think I started saying this, and I'm not sure if I finished, but Holloway was great because of the amount of unconditionals it gave. So a lot of students that had great predicteds, and sometimes maybe not great predicteds at all, because it's still top 30, I think they really did like the big scoop. So they dished out those unconditionals, which ultimately I think flatlined some people's A levels where I've already got somewhere to go, so why should I try? Or kind of projected some people up and made them work a little bit harder because they knew that they had a place to go, even if their predicteds weren't that good. But my sister went, and her year were ridiculous. They were very competitive with themselves. I think millennials had a drive that Gen Z completely lost. And her like group of friends, her unit of people, were absolutely insane at uni. And I think when I was there, it was just like everyone had actually given up. And then first year it was fun, like we went out. First Freshers Week was fun as well. And there were people from so many different backgrounds, from so many different areas of London / England, and a lot of international students. I think especially from Korea and China. So having been from somewhere else my entire life, moving here from Poland at 5, it was interesting and cool kind of getting to intermingle with people from all over. But of course, I think our generation, kind of more than the one after, which I also had some contact with, we had more kind of teething problems with that, because obviously millennials and my sister's generation, her uni experience was also very international. But I think they had their own code of conduct for that. And then I think young Gen Z kind of got really kind of hip with it, and we're trying to reintroduce stuff that kind of millennials try to get rid of. Not racism per se, but like I'm not sure how to explain it. But the general vibe of the university was extremely, by our year, and I think we were still kind of the bridge between the hipsters of the year before, like the Hawaiian shirt, corduroy kids. We were like the bridge between them and everything turning extremely Bratz. It was like from corduroy to Bratz and Bratz boyfriend, and that was the general kind of aesthetic of the pupils. Meant that the years where I started maybe weren't as Instagrammable, but they felt more human. I know that sounds cringe, but people felt a bit realer. But also in some ways people were much worse. And then by the time I was there for my 4th year, everyone was kind of really post TikTok, really kind of into raving. And in some ways fantastic, in other ways kind of 9 trillion times worse. But the university is always a girls' uni, which has its pros and cons again. 70% female population, as far as students go, and only 30% men, which when I saw that statistic I was like, really? But it was very competitive on the girls' front, but also I feel like the boys pulled out a performance as well, although very heavy on like the roadmen, and then like really sometimes really rich international guys. I did not sleep around too much at the uni though, so I can't comment on that. Right, so great place kind of for second chances by the time I'd arrived, and I think when my sister was there it was way better. Like people were like way like more driven, kind of uniting around purpose. By the time you'd gotten to Gen Z, it was flailing all around. And the club nights were okay, although they had some teething problems with that too later on. I'm pretty sure they shut Meds down or something. We had a bar called Meds and a club called the SU, and I worked there pretty early on because I needed the extra money. But I just think the place had a really kind of sort of soulless, kind of everything for the gram kind of vibe. By the time it really sat in, by the time I came back after a year abroad, but we were away from campus, I was living with the same two people that I'd lived in second year. And then when I repeated, I lived with new people, which was lovely, actually. It was refreshing. And we did try to go out a little bit. You know, I heard about their experiences, but loads of drugs, which I won't get into in this video, at the uni. And the libraries are fantastic. And it's good that everyone was having fun. But they really, like, you could tell that those departments, that those lecturers were really forced to kind of cater to the students at that point, and we were not academic weapons. Right, so overall I'd rate the uni like a 55 out of 100. I think half the time I was just bumping into kind of people that I liked, people I enjoyed spending time with, but I was paying for the kind of social aspect that I wasn't even 100% set on. And the education was complete dog shit. So I don't know, that's just my final kind of verdict on it. But I wouldn't take like my uni years back. And I think overall doing classical studies at Royal Holloway is probably what doing classics at any other uni would have actually like really felt like. I feel like doing it there is kind of doing anything there is really, it's that like rock bottom for anyone who is shooting higher up. It's that kind of rock bottom. This is what everything higher up would have actually felt like. And it's difficult to see like places that you really kind of want to see at full swing be these kind of shit versions of themselves. So I guess Holloway is a bit like you go there and it's like, this is what it would have felt like. Anyways, I don't know if I'm making much sense, but right, so I don't have too much left to do, but I'll figure something out because I have to move on to Groningen. So in northern Netherlands, that's where I did my year abroad, and I did not attend. This was during COVID, technically, so it's insane. Initially, I applied to Greece because it kind of made more sense for my course, but they pulled out of Erasmus, and I got put there as well instead. And it was still during COVID. Like, we had multiple lockdowns. I was at an accommodation of 300 international students who were majority, I think, like 90% first years, set to do a full run there. And then my corridor was majority people there on year abroad. So there was at least one corridor in that kind of cross-shaped building. Maybe it was more than 300 people. That were all there on year abroad. The Netherlands were clearly managing COVID 2 million times better than England was, because we had way more freedom. And the place was being visited by police at least at certain points once a week. We were in the news for it. And it was, out of all of the accommodations, the cheapest one. And I don't think that many people from other university accoms in Gro visited us. randomly, but we did at one point go, I don't remember the name of this icon, but we went to one of the others. I visited a different one with my friend too because her friend was going there, and they were definitely bougier. The vibe wasn't as nice, and in our one we were like a gigantic family by the end, and shocked that we survived it. To this day, it's my like probably the best year of my life that I ever had. I actually got to know people, and maybe I didn't know them at all, but I felt like I knew people on this level that was just absurd. And all we did was just like smoke outside together and like run around the corridors. Again, I didn't attend a single lecture. Most people were doing remote for half the year, so I would be kind of like napping on someone's sofa, probably Sonia's, whilst other people like watch their lectures, and I did get away with that, so I'm very lucky that I got to have that experience. But it was living with people from all over Europe on this kind of level where we were kind of sure quite a few kids there came from rich homes, but these days there's another kind of level where you're constantly bumping into people who are like performative activists and their entire family. Take in Switzerland, I lived there for 4 months au pairing, so a lot of work actually, but pretty fun too, and I got paid well, loved the family. I stayed in the house of a girl who was friends with the guy I was with at the time, and the dad worked at like a Fortune 500. He was like in the like 12 disciples of the Fortune 500. I don't remember the name of it. And she was like doing anthropology at uni. Her entire room was like covered in sand with carpets, taro, massive branches that she dragged into the house. And all she ever did was go to like super massive kind of like hippie hangouts, like essentially Burning Man type of things. So luckily I've not had too much contact with people like that because they drive me insane. And I know, like, I've been in the hippie van. I know the hippie van. I do love the hippie van. I love having a joint with my friends, and I hate the Beatles, but I'll listen to the Beatles with them. But sometimes it's just like, oh, like when you hear people's family stories when you're in the van, and it's like the worst. It feels like you're in an actual like homeless person nightmare kind of before they, I don't know, like sometimes you really are in places and like you're doing this with your privilege, like you will be more communist than you think after some interactions with people who be like, really, like you were put up in this way and this is what you do with it. And of course my sister, she is on big bucks from Meta, but this is pretty recent, and our family had absolutely no fucking money before. So I was not born into this type of like privilege. Like my mum would drive me 45 minutes to the grammar school that I attended in the south. We lived in an area that was not nearly as nice as where I went to school. And of course we were renting, we had a house, like we were put up. There was definitely privilege there. And my mum, who is a cleaner, although she didn't make good money at all really, she was cleaning for very wealthy people that were graduates from like Oxbridge, and I've been to some of their houses and it's like Grand Designs type of a crib, but usually kind of older, not houses they built themselves, so maybe not quite grand designs. Grand design. But there was a degree of that in Groningen. It was a bit of, this is why I never hung out at the skate park when I was younger. I knew people that did. But this mentality is not as like working class, kind of street ratty as people believe. Like, there's so many, and I know this is kind of like speaking really simple shit, but so many of those kids are literally like put up in the fanciest houses, completely wasting like the privilege that they've had. Mascara. But when I was there, it was such a dingy place, and we were truly at the worst. And the building wasn't bad, like, it was alright. It was just like, we were like there doing rock bottom, and it was actually like found family. It didn't feel like we were in a music video, which is the nightmare. Like, when you start going to hang out in places and you know you're just in an Instagram story. Like, I get that feeling all of the time now, and I spam on Instagram all of the time, so, you know, it might be hypocritical coming from me, but it didn't have that stale feeling of coming to like this hyper curated kind of social setting where everyone is wafer thin. It was like, it was compound. It had, those memories are so unbelievably precious to me. And Groningen as a university, I had to Google some of this shit in retrospect, but I met so many incredibly clever people that still terrify me. And I think it's because it's actually the autist's pick. Like, if you think about it, like, you could take your shit to England, but England does come with weird cultural gatekeeping, where you might not actually get to the pudding as quickly as you'd want, to the meat of this fucking situation. And in the Netherlands, it's kind of more direct. They're resourced. It's also like Amsterdam. I went on a school trip there with Art. It is the like blue hair, like emo chick, slash her boyfriend, kind of the tip of the pyramid of places for people exactly like that. And if you remember those girls in school, their boyfriends were, I know one guy who had a girlfriend like that in school, and he works for Dyson now. So they were being spanked into, whether they were autistic or not, they were running to that camp by the end of that relationship. But it wasn't this kind of like cookie cutter school textbook bullshit. It's like you had conversations with people there that I could never have had in England. I felt like I was living a completely kind of sterile, kind of narcissistic and shit existence in a lot of ways until I'd interacted with people in Groningen. And coming out of it, people start to feel more stereotypy again. But that place, as soon as I'm there, as soon as I smell the air, it's like every kind of pent up bullshit that I'm constantly riled up on here releases, and I can take a breath. It's like somewhere I needed for my entire life. And the people, the students in that university were, in a lot of ways, 9 trillion times more driven than anyone I'd ever met at Holloway. It was a cesspool for ideas, and actual, like, movement. Cesspool? I don't know. whilst I feel like in England that's what they're completely lacking. They don't, and obviously progress is a tricky one. Where are you moving? Where are you going? The kids in Groningen were locked into what needed doing, and were like assessing. And I think that's the thing. We're out of the EU. We're stuck in our own jam, aren't we? Thinking we're the shit in the fart over here. And it, I mean, I was very anti-Brexit, and obviously not having immigrated. But you know, that kind of belief that this place has this kind of authority over everywhere else. You know, England built tons of Dubai. England, you know, is responsible for a lot of fantastic things, as many horrors as they did also enact. But the place is feeling stale, in my opinion. The place is not proactive, and in comparison to Groningen, I think a lot of those extremely kind of Asperger's, autism spectrum, kind of super clever people skipped on Oxbridge, skipped on the running around with the lords, kind of entertaining old hierarchies, and went there, and literally in fields like, you know, AI, STEM, politics, the people I met that were studying those three in particular, so on it, so clever. That model UN feeling you get when you're surrounded by people from other places, wouldn't trade that off for anything else. Actually feeling enriched and exchanging like histories, as again cringe as it may sound, that was the perfect place to do it. And the degree to which I know the people that I attended, I've said this already, the friends that I made there, I'm permanently kind of feeling like a chunk of my flesh just isn't there anymore because they're not around. I was completely immersed in that experience, and when I was taken out of it, I was completely miserable. And perhaps that is because of COVID. We were all really kind of in there together. But I did speak to people from the years above, and I think they were really roughhousing it, like you know, sleeping on benches. Like they knew every dealer in the place, because obviously the Netherlands is way more progressive or regressive, however you view it, with drugs. I know that they still had fun and a great time. They were potentially just a little bit less like clingy about it with each other. But love the years above in that place, love them to pieces. They were like great guides. And that uni, and the people I met there, every time I still get to interact with them, I think they're actually actively, irrespective of how much bullshit they post on Instagram, the coolest people ever. And I'm so grateful I got to go. And the fact that kind of life sent me there, I think I was always the type of person, which I wasn't standing around the skate park with blue hair, but I think I was always the type of person that needed a bit more of that. Like I said before in a previous video, I was really a kind of Bart Simpson, female Bart Simpson in class, but I was so locked in my house. I was just moving between school and back. I didn't have anywhere to kind of vent any sort of desire for kind of being more chaotic, being more extreme. So when I was there, I full sent it, and full faith in myself. I'm weirdly, I don't think I was cocky there. I was in my element. Even if I was crying like every other week, having a breakdown every 4 weeks or something, it was completely integrated, and I would not again trade that for shit. And I'm so glad that I was there with someone else and they didn't really integrate at all. They didn't, you know, smoke the weed outside. They didn't run between the clubs. They didn't like immerse themselves in the kind of grit of the place. And good God, the shit I can handle now. And I still think my brain might be a little bit damaged from the weed. Best edibles in the entire world are definitely in Groningen. But I am such a heavyweight with certain things. And with edibles, I mean, I went clubbing on those and I gave them to another friend and they fell asleep for 3 days. So it was just, it's still difficult. I'm always scared to be kind of trapped in that place for too long. I'm always talking about how much I miss Winschow, how much I miss my year abroad. You know, once people have been, they can really become annoying about it. But you would have to pry those memories out of my cold, dead hands. And no matter what people say to me about their uni experiences, I just know theirs was shit in comparison. And the version of myself that I was there, teething problems aside, I really kind of, the friendships I made there, I felt like I was the least offensive, the least kind of performative. And even if I was whinging on Snapchat to other people saying, I feel like I'm wearing a face I don't know, in retrospect, sometimes that's like coming into yourself for the first time, and not for the first time, but kind of trying to come into yourself. And it might not be a version of you that you've really entertained that much, which again sounds nuts. I think I'm not going to bother speaking about other unis that I kind of perused / know people that attend / have opinions on, because I'm on nearly 50 minutes. I could say more about Groningen, and I feel like most of this was just me explaining my course, but literally my favourite place on earth. I can't, if I went back there now, I would just start sobbing as soon as I land. And I've been back 2 times since leaving, and I was a mess. Like, I was crying so much. And it's like I'm going to start crying now. Like, it's so difficult for me to think about, and I do think it might have been partly because of COVID, because of how locked in we were together, and we still had so much freedom in there. There was a DJ set in reception that was being shut down every night, but it was just I literally, you know, I can't exchange that for anything. Right, I think makeup's done. Hopefully it looks good. Clip out. And I'm going to head into town for a bit so I don't rot all day.